are looking for your expertise on the recovery mission that the Marines and Navy are going to work now on this amphibious assault vehicle that sank off San Clemente Island. What are your first thoughts on this?
I'm glad. Well, I'm sad that it happened, and I do want to express my condolences to the family. Firstly, and thank our military for everything they do for us. My first thoughts are that I'm glad that they found it, so they know where it is. As I read, it's in 365 feet of water, which by our standards is pretty shallow. It's deeper than divers can dive, unfortunately, because if the divers could have access to it, then I think it would be easier to do the salvage operations. What they're using now is an ROV, and that stands for Remote Operational Vehicle. So I thought maybe it would be interesting to your viewers to describe that briefly. The size of an electric car, and it has a wire that connects to the ship. So the operator of that ROV is looking at a television screen, basically, and it has manipulators on it. They can equip it with tools. These are a well-developed workhorse of the oceanographic community. They're used quite a bit around rigs and things like that. And so I think that firstly, they would want to do a detailed map of the site. And that would require the ROV with its excellent eyes or TV cameras swimming around and basically doing perhaps even a three-dimensional map of the site, because the technologies we have now using sound and light can be combined to produce extremely accurate three-dimensional maps. And so that would be the first thing, would be to get a very detailed map of the site, and sadly, of course, to see where the bodies are. And then the next step would be to plan the salvage operation. And I looked online. These are about 21-foot vehicles that weigh about 65,000 pounds. So you're talking about, you know, something that's fairly large. I mean, if you see the picture of these things, they look hardened, because when used, they would be carrying soldiers for an amphibious assault. And so the idea, I think, would be if they could, one of the good things about being in 365 feet is that's pretty deep. You know, we would probably in meters, but I would imagine that most large ships that would be able to salvage that could be brought close enough because the water's deep enough. Had it been shallower, it would be, I think, much more difficult to get a large ship in. But of course, that would present other opportunities. So I did want to point out that given that depth, it provides them a lot of opportunities for bringing in large ships that would then presumably have the capability to raise that craft. Now, I don't know if it would have anchor points on it, or if, you know, they would certainly want to consult engineers, naval engineers. Ordinarily, that amphibious assault vehicle is launched out of a large boat. It just is like a flap that flaps down and then basically swims itself to shore till it gets to a place where the treads can then bring the soldiers up on shore. So I would imagine that they could get a large enough ship in there, and if the amphibious assault vehicle has the capability of sustaining the force that would be necessary to bring it up, I think they would just bring the whole thing back onto the boat. But I'm not an expert in salvage per se, but those are my initial thoughts. First, you do a site survey, get the three-dimensional information, speak to naval engineers, be considerate of any human remains that are on board. You certainly don't want to injure them in the process of recovering the vehicle. And had they the capability to have points to attach, and the necessary capability on a large ship. My guess is they would bring the whole.
And so, you know, they're talking about trying to get this amphibious assault vehicle up by Friday. And considering they told us yesterday, you're thinking like a full day of just surveying the location before they start any of those kind of movements to try and recover this vehicle. And yes, you know, also in consideration are the 7 Marines and 1 sailor who are reportedly aboard this vehicle.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I'm imagining these people are working 24/7. I am not familiar with the resources that the Navy would have for salvage, but I would imagine that had they locally such resources, uh, given that we have such a large naval presence in San Diego, it wouldn't be unimaginable that they were here, and they would scooty over there. And San Clemente, there's a lot of naval operations that happen there, as you know, and that's why this was happening there as well. So I guess I'm not familiar. They would probably want to fly in experts that would be capable of operating both the ROV in a mode that would allow it to affix the necessary hardware to the amphibious assault vehicle to bring it up. And I can't really comment on that timeline. You get enough people and enough smarts and enough luck, and if the sea conditions are, you know, calm enough so that you're not pounding and you can actually place the cables where you need them to be, I would imagine that, you know, we could get it up pretty quickly. Friday sounds aggressive, to be honest, but I have no experience in this, so I wouldn't be able to give you a timeline.
Yeah, I mean, that's a 26-ton amphibious AAV. So you were very familiar with that, was it the ROV that's helping them locate it and do the survey and all that kind of stuff? What else is that capable of? You know, that can help attach the recovery
Yeah,
missions and all
sure.
that?
So, oh, sorry for interrupting. So as far as the ROV goes, uh, there is a special class of ROV operators that are trained, and it has manipulators, which it can use to grab things. It can have a repertoire of tools that it uses to, it's just like an auto shop underwater. I guess would be the thing that I would draw it as a comparison to. I'm sure they have cutting tools on the ROVs. Uh, think about all of the things that you do underwater in the oil patch, where you're working at much larger depths. And I would imagine they have a full repertoire of capability. So pretty much anything we could do, the sea states are calm and the surface vessel is not going up and down. I would imagine they could do quite a bit. I guess the auto shop comparison is probably the best thing. I'm sure they have grinders and cutters, and I'm not sure about welding or other things, but I think they have a lot of capability. It is a single vehicle. I don't think you'd want to put 2 of them in the water because you would always worry about the cables tangling. So imagine you have one auto mechanic and they're working on the underwater job that they have to do.
Are you very familiar with this location? I understand that off San Clemente Island, it goes from shallow to very deep water rather quickly. And are you familiar with that area? And can you describe that area at all?
Yeah, we've not gotten that close to San Clemente. We were close enough. There is a trough off of San Diego, uh, and we've worked there because of our studies on the organisms in the ocean that like to swim down during the day. But I wouldn't be surprised. There are 3-dimensional maps of the seafloor, so I would imagine you could go on, you know, the Google Maps, and you could easily see the topography of the seafloor, and I wouldn't be surprised if it dropped off pretty quickly. But as I said, we're lucky given how afortuitous this all is, but given that it's not that deep, I mean, we're deep, when we were looking for the Malaysian jetliner, we were in, 15,000 feet. Titanic was 13,000 feet. So when you think about 365 feet, you're going, oh, I'm glad it's not deeper. But sadly, it is. I'm not sure about the rebreather technology or the technologies that deep sea divers have to be able to work at those depths. I'm not a diver anymore, and I'm not an expert on biology. But I would imagine that the ROV would have the capability of attaching the necessary hardware and or cutting through. But this is an assault vehicle that's meant to go to war. So I'm thinking those plates are pretty thick, and it wouldn't be very easy to actually could drill holes. Not sure what else.
Right. And for the Malaysia aircraft, they were using drone type technology, right? Or that could go off on their own without a man behind the helm, right?
Yeah. So as a short lesson in marine physics, there are two types of vehicles, as we would call them. One are, as you referred to them, were drones. They're large, but they go from small to large torpedo-shaped self-propelled vehicles are capable of mapping mostly, not having the mechanical capability to do the kinds of operations we're talking here. And then there are these other technologies called the ROVs, or remote operational vehicles, which are really not meant to do survey per se, or even search. But when you're in a small area, they're really quite good at giving you an almost human-like presence at that depth. So yes, the ROVs and what you referred to as drones were so they may have mapped the site with similar drones to begin with. My guess, they had a very good locus because, we're all in a GPS world today. And then once they mapped the site to find the amphibious assault vehicle, then they could deploy the ROV to do a much finer survey, which would then guide the operations, the mechanical operations that would occur next, which would consist presumably of sadly retrieving the sailors and or the entire assault vehicle itself.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your insight. I mean, any other thoughts that you may want to leave our viewers with, just your impression of what happened and now them in the recovery mode?
I guess I just want to express my condolences, as we as sailors are always sad to see death at sea. And if our scientific community, which encompasses both environmental and technical resources, can help in any way, we want to let the public know that we're here for you.
Right. And you do that kind of research at those type of depths, right? I mean, 385 feet down?
Me personally?
Yes.
Yeah, well, so our group specializes in making sensors. And so we are the eyes and the ears for the underwater vehicles, not necessarily the hands. And we've also been involved in robotics, and we work down into the top 500 feet of the water, because we're interested in the marine life that is stimulated by sunlight, basically. We are not, in my group, we're not deep sea oceanographers. But of course, at Scripps, we have people that work at all depths into the deepest parts of the ocean to understand the physics and the biology and the chemistry. And so we are quite comfortable with all operations at all of these depths.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us.